Hello everyone, welcome back to the DVD series. My name is Adam, and in today's episode we're going to be going through the history, the evolution of the DVD format. Now, when everybody thinks DVD, they most likely just think of a DVD film. The DVD standing for digital video disc. But to call it just a film and a video disc is actually doing the format a disservice and not really talking about the true potential of the format. The real name for DVD is digital versatile disc because it can do so much more. It is a storage format rather than just a video format. And so digital versatile disc is its more appropriate name. Everyone just calls it DVD though. Now, to understand and appreciate the full history of DVD, we have to go back to 1987, when a war was raging between two factions. Two companies or entities were battling it out for optical disc supremacy. In the blue camp, you have Philips and Sony. After the successful launch of the compact disc, Philips and Sony were lining up to release the CDI, which is a compact disc with digital video and digital music encoded on a compact disc, generally a 2-disc affair, and was released in North America and Europe to a moderate success, requiring a new player to play them and a CRT TV to view them on. They were okay. You know, VHS quality resolution with digital sound, it was a cheaper alternative to Laserdisc and about the same quality as VHS, but they proudly said that it won't wear out after the 1000th play, unlike a VHS. Now, in the other camp, the red camp, you had Toshiba, Pioneer, JVC, Time Warner, which was the company that owned Warner Brothers, and a few other companies who were also releasing their own video disc label of video CD or VCD. Now, these were again 2 discs of exactly the same technology as a CDI, but a CDI was more aimed at movies and applications and games, whereas the video CD or VCD was purely aimed at films and did quite well in the eastern territories of the world, where humidity was so high that VHS wasn't even in question, and it was a lot cheaper than Laserdisc for those economically challenged countries. Now, both of those formats I'm going to do a future series on in full, but by 1993 both entities, you know, were gearing up for release, and it got the attention of companies like IBM, Compaq, Microsoft, Apple, and HP, who were gearing up for their own release of hardware where they may want to include the latest technology of disk storage space. Now, they were both gearing up with 2 different products by 1993. In the blue camp, Philips and Sony were working on the multimedia CD, which was a storage medium that was going to be about 4.5 gigs in size, dual layered as an evolution from their compact disc technology. Whereas in the red camp, Pioneer, Toshiba, Time Warner, and JVC, with others, we're gearing up for a SDD or a super density disc. This was a 5 gigabyte double-sided optical disc that would supersede their own VCD and pave the way, they hoped, for a new format to break through and take over even Laserdisc as the new format for films, and specifically aiming it at the film market with the array of Warner Brothers titles that they would have available to them. Now, the companies that saw these 2 formats gearing up head to head were a bit concerned, as nobody wanted to back the wrong pony and cost them billions in lost revenue for backing a format that would not then win out into the future. Microsoft were gearing up for a new PC launch, and Apple were gearing up for a new, Mac launch, and so neither wanted to lose millions of dollars in revenue. So the 5 companies of IBM, HP, Compaq, Microsoft, and Apple all got together to release a press statement to say that unless these two entities work together to release a single definitive format, they would boycott both of them in the future. Now, this must have sent ripples down the halls of all the companies involved in these two entities, as they very well know that both Apple and Microsoft and IBM were major competitors in the hardware for them, industries, that losing out sales to them for their new technology would cost them billions of lost revenue. And so Sony was the very first company to sort of pony up and say, maybe we should work together to create a unified format for the future, as opposed to two separate warring ones. And so the digital versatile disc specs were born. It would be a optical disc on both sides, utilizing the space of dual layers for up to 18 gigs worth of storage space available on the disc. And by 1995, the actual specs for the technology was completely done and ready to launch. Now, we're going to go through these specs because it's quite interesting. There were 5 different DVD books available of specs, and each book was very different from one another, and each carried its own list of specifications for manufacturers and film companies who wanted to either produce DVD players or DVD discs. They had to follow and conform to one of these 5 different books. The books available were a DVD video book, which would mean putting a film on a DVD. And it had a whole list of specifications, which was actually kept confidential and top secret, requiring a license to obtain the book as the spec sheet and the right to actually use the DVD video logo, to pay a license fee of $5,000 to a company called the DVD Association FLLC. And we'll get back to that in a minute. The next book available was the DVD audio book, to allow discs to be made in the DVD audio format for high definition music. This would include future releases of SACD, where some releases would even be dual layered for a CD layer on one end and a SACD layer on the other end, meaning the CD layer could be read in any CD player, and then the SACD layer could be read only in SACD players. It also included the DTS 5.1 DVD audio discs that were going to become available, and all the specifications required to manufacture those discs and players. The third book was the DVD-R book, which held the specifications for blank media to be able to create recordable DVDs that would be both single and double layer in nature. There was also the DVD rewritable book, which allowed DVD discs that were recordable again and again and again. That one would become a very firm favorite, I imagine, amongst pirates. And then there was finally the DVD-ROM book, which allowed drives for PCs and the specs needed for those to be made and created. Now, within each book, there were a list of specifications where the manufacturer would have to choose 2 formats to work within, one of 2 formats. And within those 1 or 2 formats, there would be 4 complementary systems that could be implemented. 1 was mandatory, and you would then choose the disk format for which you would work within. Now, the disk formats were 4 different types in variety. You had and I'll use movies as an example here. You had the single-sided single layer, or DVD-5, which held the information just on the one side. You also had the DVD-10 disc, which was a single layer but double-sided disc, allowing for both sides to be optimized and used. These were very popular at launch with films like Armageddon and Titanic, the early releases. These were quite cheap to make. The third format was the DVD-9, or the dual layered single-sided disc, having 2 layers available where the laser would just refocus to get the next layer and increase the capacity by double, having 8.5 gigabytes of storage space available to the manufacturer. And the final one was the DVD-18 disc, which would be a double-sided dual layered disc to maximize the amount of space that could be had on a single DVD disc, having up to 18 gigabytes of data or storage space available for the user. So once you've picked your format of which disc type you're going to use, and then you've picked your book for which format you're going to release in, is it going to be a DVD audio, a DVD video, you then have to read through the book and get up the specifications for manufacture of the discs and the players. Now, coming back to the DVD video book, it cost $5,000 to obtain the license to get access to that information. And the DVD Association FLLC company would issue out the license and a high-res version of the DVD logo to be able to utilize it on your products. Now, this was true from the 1995 all the way up to 2024, when the association actually stated that they will get rid of the license fee, and no longer will you have to pay to obtain the license to use the DVD logo or manufacture and know what the specs are for manufacturing of discs. And it wasn't after that, it wasn't until January of this year, 2025, that the association itself, the company, was dissolved and gone forever. This basically means that anybody can use the DVD logo now and manufacture their own DVD discs for sale, as long as you know what the specifications are. Now, like I said, the specifications were kept under lock and key, confidential, top secret. Pay your $5,000. You had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that you would not share with the information contained within the book. I'm just going to use this book as an example, but it would be a book manual that you would get listing all the specifications for all the different format for that disc type you're going to make. So if you got the DVD video book, you would have your specifications sheet for the 4 different disc types, and then you would have to then proceed to pick which one of those 4 disc types you will make. And we're going to go through the whole process so you can understand what it was like for companies like, say, Universal Studios or 20th Century Fox, who weren't already a part of this DVD creation. They had to go and get the license to be able to manufacture and bring out titles, pardon me, like The Abyss on DVD. The DVD video book specs state that you pick your format. Let's say we're making a single-sided dual-layered disc. That is the most common use for DVD nowadays. How DVDs are manufactured is pretty simple. You have 2 DVD layers. One is generally blank and the other one will contain data. For a dual-layered system, you will have the data written to one side of the disc and again on the other side of the disc here. One will be slightly sort of like, for simple terms, blurred against the other. So the laser, when these 2 discs are stamped together and you'd have the printed side here, all the information is read behind this plastic layer of protection, where the laser would read one layer and then refocus to be able to read the other. Now, if it was a single layer, the same process would be applied, but if it was a double-sided disc, you would have the information read or stamped on both disc sides on the inside, and then when stamped together, you could physically see the information from both sides, and there is no printed side now. This ensured that the plastic poly that was protecting protecting the information could not harm the data on the disk. Of course, as we all know, if you scratch that plastic, the laser finds it hard to get to the data on the disk, and so sometimes will make it unplayable. Now, the specs for the DVD book, you would choose your disc. We got dual layered, single-sided on the go. Now we have to choose the format for the market share for which disc type you're going to create. Is it going to be an NTSC disc or a PAL disc? Once you've chosen one of those two formats, you then have a whole new specifications sheet that you then have to adhere to in order for your disc or your player to be compatible across the board with everything. Now, once you've got your format of the disc type of the NTSC or the PAL, for the market you want to produce for, you then have the choice of 4 complementary systems. The first one being a mandatory must-have, and that is region coding. We'll come back to that. The second one is macrovision protection, and that is an anti-piracy measure for the protection of the disk. The third one is what's known as CSS, or content scramble systems, which basically is another anti-piracy measure. If it detects it's being copied, it scrambles the data on the recording to try and mess everything up for the pirate. This was quickly hacked in 1999 by a program called DSys, I believe. So the only one that's not been hacked is Macrovision. And the fourth complementary system is something called UOP, Disabled User Operations, and this basically allows the manufacturer to disable buttons either on the remote or the player for any part of the discs, mainly used for like your FBI warnings or trailers that you can't skip past, but Vinegar Syndrome uses it for their Region 1 discs to prevent you from bypassing the region coding on your player to play the disc in a non-Region 1 player. That, the Macrovision and the Content Scramble system are complementary systems that it's down to the manufacturer to pop in. It's not a must-have. The only one that is a must-have is the region coding for either the player or the disc. And believe it or not, there is 9 different regions for DVD, and they don't pertain to Blu-ray or 4K. They are their own separate entity, and I'll go through each region. So Region 1 is North America and Canada. Region 2 is the UK and Japan. Region 3 is Southeast Asia. Region 4 is Latin America and Oceanic. Region 5 is Africa, Russia, Central and South Asia. Region 6 is China. Region 7 is reserved for media or press copies, kind of like the, for your consideration, the awards versions for Oscar nominations. Region 8, which is the coolest one, is reserved for ocean liners, aircraft and spacecraft, meaning astronauts are watching DVDs in space. And the final 9th region, or Region 0, is Region 3, encompassing all the previous flags set for 1 to 8. It's not actually a free region, it's just, it encompasses them all. Now, it's down to the manufacturer to choose one or more regions for the disc and the player, and it must contain that. It doesn't have to contain CSS or disabled user operations or macrovision protection, but it must contain region coding. Now, for Region 0, you mainly on release of DVD found that to be educational discs. Very few movie studios utilized Region 0 to release a movie on. But when they started to do that, and more studios started to release Region 0, the fight back from the kind of DVD association was to create something called region encoding enhancement, or RCE, which basically was built into the DVD player itself. And if it detected a region 0 disc in whatever region the player was, it would disable the playback of that disc and prevent it from playing, even it's a region 0 disc. This was short-lived, and only few DVD players were implemented with this new tech, as they found it was having problems even reading legit region 1 discs, so they soon scrapped it and just let region 3 be its own thing. Now, once you've got your disc and you've decided on the market, NTSC or PAL, and you've decided what systems and the content that you're going to put on that, which we're going to go to the video and sound in a separate video, so I won't talk about that here, but suffice to say that the NTSC system and the PAL system have two very separate ways of encoding the information on the disk, and that has to be done according to the specifications in the DVD video book for which disk type you were making for. And it's the same for the players. When you went to go manufacture a player, you either choose a region 1 or a region 2, or rather an NTSC or a PAL player, which would then have the region 1 or region 2 depending on who you were selling it to. Later on, region 3 players also hit the market, but not at launch. Now, the first country to get DVD when it released was Japan on November the 1st, 1996. There were 4 titles available from Warner Brothers, The Fugitive being one of them, but the majority of releases were music videos from Japan, and it sold quite well, although VCD was still quite popular as a cheaper alternative. Laserdisc was still very popular in Japan, and there wasn't much warming up of advertisement for DVD when it first launched. It sold quite well, and there were only a handful of players, usually by Sony or Toshiba. But it wasn't until the following year that the North American market would find they would be getting DVDs released. Originally, it was meant to be early 1997. Players were being built, discs were being manufactured. There would be 32 on release, Twister being one of them. There were a few hiccups in the dual layered system, so all the discs initial release were single layers, either double-sided or single-sided, and the release kept getting pushed back from March now to July, and it wasn't until August the 22nd, 1997, just 7 days short of James Cameron's Judgment Day date from Terminator 2, that's a bit creepy, that DVD finally exploded into North America. Now, these delays of the DVD launch really helped the DVD promotion. A lot of Americans were waiting for DVD, and a lot of people in Europe was hearing the buzz both from Japan and America about DVD, so they were aware of it but just not able to access it. Americans were beginning to enjoy the releases of DVD in summer 1997 and the winter 1997, but it would be until March 1998 that us Brits would finally get what everyone else in the world, except for Australia, had finally been having. The DVD launched in March 1998 to the UK and again exploded onto the scene. Everybody going out, replacing their VHSs and buying all the films again on DVD, getting a player. The early players, which we'll go through all, different players in the player video, but the early players were a little bit restrictive in their features, but eventually would go on and, have better players that had better filters or processors on board and had more abilities. The discs at first were flipper discs for the UK. I remember getting Armageddon, and it was a disc that you had to flip over halfway through. A lot of initial early releases were single layer, so you either had to flip it or you had a reduction in quality on a single side. Now, it wasn't until 1999, 3 years after DVD launched in Japan, that Australia finally got DVD and got to see what the world was sweating all about. DVD now had finally exploded, and we were finding that manufacturers were releasing films in various different ways because there were so many disc types that could be used. They all had to stick to the format of what it said in the DVD video book, but you got your single layer, your double layer, you got your single sided or your double sided. Now, like I said, double layered discs didn't really come out until about 1998. There was a lot of problems with the adhesive, the way the manufacturer would process the dual layeredness. All the players could read dual layered discs, that wasn't the problem, but the disc manufacturing themselves, they weren't happy. They were having so many fails. The early dual layered discs that got released, they're the ones that could have the most problems, especially if it's double-sided and dual-layered. If you have a dual-sided, double-layered disc that is an early release, chances are you're going to find that it's not actually going to play well into the future, because the way that these would adhere to each other is through a glue, effectively the system of pressure and glue, and it's that glue that can interfere with the information on the disc as it kind of breaks down over time. And dual layered double-sided discs are kind of ones for not making it through time. But the shelf life of a DVD is something between 30 to 50 years of, if you keep that DVD without scratching it in good condition in a sort of non-humid or hot environment, chances are you're gonna have your DVD outlive you before it's not able to play. Now, that doesn't talk anything about the player being able to read the disc. That's talking solely about the disc itself. Players can get updates, and sometimes new firmware updates might actually make early release titles disabled from playing. I have a DVD player that isn't an internet connectable DVD player. It's a 2004 player. It plays the old titles just fine, but I also have a 4K Blu-ray player which has a built-in DVD player and sometimes doesn't get on with early release titles. Now, the packaging for DVDs was quite insane, I think. You got cases like Phenomenon where it was a plastic one like that, with the DVD inside and the notes there. That's probably your typical, most famous case. It's alright. Warner Brothers were so popular for, cheaping out on casings, where in the UK, I don't know if it was the same for America, but we got these snapper cases with basically cardboard, and you could literally take your case apart by flipping up the plastic and down and literally just detaching everything from the case itself. If you damaged your artwork and you just wanted to replace it, you didn't have to go out and buy a whole new DVD. You could just literally replace the artwork, and I think that's a pretty cool notion. But cardboard is flimsy. Cardboard, although it's double layered here, so it's quite thick. But it was snapper cases are kind of some regard as nice, but others regard as a bit cheap. But it is what it is, Other ones, you get your steelbook tins, metal. These really protect the discs quite nicely. They're quite heavy, so that just ups the postage cost if you decide to get it mailed to you, but they were another option. Obviously, you got box sets of various different types. Some DVD cases from Criterion were double-sided for some reason, so you'd open it one side, you got a DVD there, and instead of placing the other DVD here, you'd close it, and then you'd open it on the top, and there's your other disc. And it kind of makes the disc itself look a bit more prestigious than it actually is. But that's another one. And then, of course, a lot of people, especially 20th Century Fox, they love this with their Die Hard Special Edition, their Speed Special Edition, or the Abyss Special Edition, where it's a complete cardboard cutout, fold-out job with just a couple of, although this one's in really nice condition, with just a couple of plastic inserts glued onto the plastic. Now, this, for me, is the worst way to have your DVDs housed, because not only over time is the wearing and tearing going to crease the spine, and eventually it will detach the more you use it, but these plastic things are glued onto the cardboard backing, meaning once that glue is done, the whole thing will just slide off and detach. And many a time has that happened to me over the years, needing to replace the entire case. But unfortunately, it's not just a simple case of going to buy, or gluing back on. You have to literally buy the entire movie again, I feel. These, I'm not a big fan of the this way. In fact, entire box sets can be delivered like this, literally stacked up on end. I mean, I don't mind cardboard in itself, but not when it's plastic adhesed cardboard. My favorite two ways, I guess, would be I would do it that way with the plastic box. Plastic doesn't rot over time as quickly as cardboard does, or just the simple standard, case like that. They're my two favorite ways, I feel, to bring a DVD to a disc. I don't like the cardboard ones, but anyway, I remember DVD hitting the shelves in 1998. I remember it being advertised in my magazines that I'd be reading in 1997 or 1998. It says 1999 on this one. But DVD Review, they were the first to cash in on the sort of hype of DVD by creating a magazine that hyped the shit out of DVD. Told you everything you need to know about DVD. And really was a good magazine. They did reviews of the latest films that were coming out in both the UK and America. So you'd flip to a certain point in the book and you would find the US reviews of films, and you would find that, the USA were getting the better deal on a lot of DVDs with extra features, and the UK were getting stiffed on having no features, and there was a reason for that, to be honest. America is a large country with a lot of people in it, but they all speak English for the majority of it. And so the only English language that you really need to have on a American DVD is English. And so you would have one language track usually on a disc. In fact, the specifications, which we'll get to in the video sound section, means in the North America, it's not mandatory to have a PCM track. You can literally just have a stereo or Dolby Digital track, and that is it. There is no mandatory, you have to have this. So having just the one soundtrack, like this one, it says Dolby Digital Stereo, that's all it is. Although it does say a French language track as well, so this is probably from Canada. But then you have more room for other things, like special features. But then if you go to a UK or a Europe version of the film, you'll find that generally there are about 6 languages on this disc. DVD holds up to 8 languages, and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus a commentary. 8 different language tracks are on this single disc, meaning you ain't got much room left over for extra features. You haven't got much room for a documentary or deleted scenes, although this one is filled with that. The film quality is just absolute trash. Don't recommend getting the German version of Dragonheart. The American version of Dragonheart literally has one audio track and the director's commentary, and the picture quality is much better. So the reason that the PAL discs were getting kind of stiffed of extras in the early days, is that they would have to cater to all the language tracks. There was one company who was responsible for the authorship of discs, and they were called Stream, ironically enough. And they would be, burdened with, making sure, okay, this is what we're going to have on this DVD, and these are the countries that we're going to make it for. And so if you think about it, in Europe, you've got like 20 plus countries with about 7 plus different languages being spoken. So if you had to make a disc for each of those languages separate, you're going to be spending 10 times the amount. Whereas if you can make one disc that has 7 different languages on it, you can then just print those discs and send them out to 7 different countries. It was a lot cheaper for the company Stream to do it that way in the early days, before they had the revenue to then make country specific releases. So they were, not able to afford the license for certain extras that the American cousins would have had, because, well, they only have the one language. There's a lot more people in that country. There's more funds to be able to source and license extra content for a DVD release. It wasn't really until 1999, between that and 2001, that the funds were available and that the discs were being made for UK specific, Australia specific, or Germany or France specific, and the extras were beginning to filter down to us people in the PAL regions. We really got stiffed in those early days of extra features. But my memory is, reading the Empire magazine and seeing adverts for DVDs coming soon, and I'm like, and this was 1997. And I couldn't wait. I was like, okay, cool. This is a high quality format. It's much better than VHS. You'd see, pictures in magazines of somebody looking at a DVD and somebody looking at a VHS, and it was night and day. The picture quality between the two is night and day. And when it finally came in 1998, I remember there was a guy who sold locally to me who had advertised, I believe, in Empire. And he would drop off a book to your house, a yellow printed book, and inside the yellow printed book would be the films coming out, and they'd be like reasonably priced, $10.99, $11.99, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll have this one, I'll have that one, and because I lived close to him, he would hand deliver them to me at first. Then I stopped buying from him, to be honest. But yeah, I've got some great fond memories of DVD in the early days, flicking through DVD Review and seeing certain adverts for Region 1 discs. They're out there already, and yet the film is still in the cinema for us. It was crazy. The staggered release date around the world was a lot larger than it is today. You get global release dates now that all happen on the same day. Very rarely is it a staggered release, but it was months between releases. I mean, obviously, DVD launching in Japan versus, Australia, that's a 3-year difference. But when a film came out, it would release usually Japan, America, and then months later, about 3 to 6, we would get it in the UK. And so, yeah, piracy was a major problem for DVD, but it had a system on board to tackle it specifically, and the one system on board, a DVD, has still yet to be hacked. I believe Macrovision protection is still unhacked on the DVD format, whereas CSS isn't. But the format of DVD is, I think, a really revolutionary format. It enabled movies, to go from a Laserdisc size release to a very small, thin, compared to VHS release. You'd have more on your shelf in a higher quality. You know, it revolutionized, I believe, a lot of different industries around the world. Games suddenly had the ability, because of the storage space, to be bigger and, you know, higher resolution textures. It really pushed forward gaming technology because at the end of the day, there was no internet to stream a game down to your PC. You were, you know, booting up a disc to be able to, you know, play the game. And the more you could pack on that disc, the bigger the installation would be, or the bigger the game would be. You know, no more was it like 2 or 3 or 4 CDs you were getting 1 or 2 DVDs. And the music industry really, again, was revolutionized between the quality of what you'd get on a CD versus what is possible on a DVD audio. You know, high quality, again, we'll cover this in the audio video, but 96, you know, frequency kilohertz, 24-bit resolution, high quality studio master, you know, possibility audio on a disc at home. You know, SACDs for me are really good against normal CDs. It's a night and day difference for me. But so, like, the music industry was revolutionized, I believe. The gaming industry, offices and companies now had more storage available to them. So applications got bigger. You know, you could fill a DVD full of songs, MP3s, photos. Like, the storage space medium went from 700 megabytes on a single CD to 18 gigabytes on a single DVD. You know, and that just meant that everybody had more space to do things in. It really, you know, DVDs are not just films. It really revolutionized not just the movie industry, but almost every industry around the world. And I don't think a lot of people realize how impactful DVD was. And this fight between these two factions, you have the blue Sony Philips, who would go on then to try and again wage war against the red faction of Toshiba, Pioneer, Time Warner, JVC, who were making HD DVD, the extension of DVD, and then Sony Philips, who were making Blu-ray, the extension of DVD, again furthering, you know, storage space capacity, and the war that raged on in high definition. These two factions have been at war since the 80s, and the blue side won for now. Who knows what will happen in the future, but DVD is really the one format where they came together, and instead of fighting, created a unified solution. And I really wish they'd have done that for the high definition era, you know. But DVDs are really good, and if you have a really good setup of either a projector or a TV, and you have the right equipment calibrated in the right way, DVDs can look like Blu-ray. The quality, and yet the price on these things is so low. You can buy them for pence in a charity shop. You can cheap as chips, you know, compared to Blu-ray and 4K, which obviously are higher resolution formats with bigger storage capacity on them. But a DVD on a 55-inch OLED 4K telly is very filmic, acceptable quality. That I'm totally happy watching a DVD. You know, I don't need a 4K and pay 5 times the price, or a Blu-ray to pay 3 times the price, where I can buy, you know, a DVD for like 1 or 2 quid and be happy with it. Like, DVDs have a special place in my heart because I was like, what, about 15, I think, when they first started coming out. And there's a lot of stuff on DVD not available yet on Blu-ray or 4K. There's a lot of stuff obviously on VHS that's not available on DVD, but they made a stamp on the world, you know, and are still being utilized in some markets today. Like, the games industry has moved on to Blu-rays. You know, both Microsoft and Sony, they're both using Blu-rays. But some businesses, some industries still use DVD because the hardware is much more cheaper, easier to fix, and more accessible than, say, the Blu-ray technology. You know, I've got a DVD USB drive here. You know, this has the ability to swap its regions out like 5 times before it's then locked to that single region. But this was like, I think, 30 quid on Amazon when I bought it donkey's years back. I've seen a Blu-ray drive for like 70 quid on Amazon, basically like this, but a Blu-ray drive, and it's like 70, you know, versus say 30, and the discs are cheaper. But you know, the technology of DVD really, I believe, revolutionized a lot of industries, not just the movie industry. But what happened after the launch now, the global launch of DVD? What happened to the format? Well, it went on to become the #1 best-selling format by 2001, beating VHS for players, and everybody, 80% of America had a DVD player versus a VHS player or a Laserdisc player. It was like that's 2001. Like Disney now joined DVD in 2000 and was releasing their catalog on DVD. But by 2001, you were getting TV shows on DVD now. Like everything was being put to DVD. To date, there is no like number of how many disc titles there are available. It's uncountable now. There's so many, you know. But in 2001, it really started taking a hold to the point where America stopped putting films on Laserdisc because DVDs were cheaper to manufacture, better quality, and like just completely taken off around the world. Like everybody, I included, sold my entire VHS collection to buy my first player and Titanic, my first film, and then started collecting and buying again all the films I bought on VHS. You know, up until 2005, I had like what, you know, 8 years of DVD, and I still don't have some titles that I used to have on DVD. I'm still, you know, but I have so many more titles that I never had on DVD just the same. But as the format evolved, the manufacturing process to make players, to make discs, to transfer films onto disc, everything just got better and better, and the quality of a DVD now is almost indistinguishable on certain TVs to a Blu-ray. Like the quality is seriously, you know, there. And still today in 2025, DVD is the best-selling #1 format of optical disc media. It outsells Blu-ray, it outsells 4K, it surely probably, I don't know if it outsells CD in terms of, well, they don't make CDs anymore, but I'm sure DVD audio is still, you know, kicking it and still making it, being cheaper over Blu-ray audio, you know. Yeah. DVD evolved on through the years, just getting stronger and stronger. And even when Blu-rays and HD DVDs came out, you know, it was easy to advance into the high definition next era because they were being packed in with these DVDs and Blu-rays. You know, HDVD had a dual side system where it was a HDVD on one side and a DVD on the other. So if you were looking to maybe move into the high definition format, you could just go buy that high definition version and still be able to play on your DVD player that version. Same with Blu-ray. Blu-ray and DVDs were being packed together, so to encourage you to buy the next release. There was like the release of high definition material really didn't kill DVD. It wasn't even streaming when that launched in sort of like 2017 plus, leading up to the 2020, and like DVD still sold. Like they dropped a little bit, but they haven't gone away, and they're beginning to rise back up. They never dropped below the sales of Blu-ray, and it's never dropped below the sales of 4K. DVD is still like the #1 selling format and everybody's choice because it's cheap to make, it's cheap to own, it's like the ideal collector's format, if anything. And honestly, with a good setup, it looks decent. It looks acceptably good. It looks filmic and pleasing. And I have got loads of DVDs that I've seen and loved the visual look of. And I've done comparisons on other videos between Blu-ray and DVD. Go check them out. But for this video, I want to say thank you for watching. And join me down with the links below, where you'll be able to see the video of DVD and the specifications contained within. And we're going to look at the sound of DVDs, how they're put together, the DVD players, and much, much more within this series. My name is Adam. Thank you for watching and take care. I'll see you next time.